So we're coming to the end of our session, and we want to thank you for joining us for this session to review CSR and HSE practices. The session is not over, but the presentations are. We're going to move here into a live Q&A session. But just to review real quick, we have seen a set of varied presentations covering diverse topics, which range from broad corporate goals to specific regulatory compliance challenges. We also dug into the practicalities of implementing HSE procedures within modern systems, as well as moving from paper to digital processes in an emergency response planning. And finally, we saw with our GIS mission how we can have situational awareness and great communication when an incident happens, both in the field as well as back to the IC. So what we would like to do right now is actually to invite our speakers, and we're going to open an interactive Q&A. Over the last few days, after all the sessions, we have had this live Q&A, and it has quickly become the favorite part for our audience, is to really have our presenters come back, have a chat, answer the questions, and then share all the great experiences that you've had. So there's a little housekeeping items for our presenters here. You're all mute. So whenever I call on you or Tiffany, make sure that you unmute, and then hopefully we can have a great dialogue here. So thank you, Andy. Welcome, Angie, Vanda, and our own Matt Ballard. So maybe to start the dialogue a little bit, seems like a common thread or subject that we saw in all of your presentations was this matter of kind of starting a journey, implementing GIS, maybe in a new department or in a new approach. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And Vanda, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. I think we all seen that a lot of oil and gas companies are looking not only to move into a new department or venture, but really transform themselves completely. And I know Oxy is kind of leading the charge, today, and you in the GIS department as well. So tell us a little bit, how did this happen? I know you shared a little bit in your presentation, kind of how you get started, but in the company as a whole, how did you elevate GIS and kind of brought that value to the organization?
Well, thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, so at Oxy, I always refer to not just the whole organization, but also to the GIS and the GDM, the data management group, as a really close-knitted community. So we really know each other, not just in headquarters in Houston, but now in Denver and in Colorado as well, and then throughout the whole entire field in New Mexico and Texas, and of course, many times in international as well. So because of this small, community, what I'm referring to, it's pretty easy to stick out as a sore thumb when you do something very, interesting and unique like GIS, right? So, and luckily, because we talk about our invention and our maps and our projects and people asking about us, then, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? I see this one in somebody's else's computer, or somebody showed me this, somebody showed me that. So it goes like in a little village, one person to another, one floor to another, one office to another. And then we are able to, reach out to the farthest locations, in onshore operation and get into people's doors and life and work, and then just tell them, then, yeah, this is what we do. We can help you. Let us know what you are trying to do, and then consider put it on the map. And every single time, we show them what we are capable of, they are just amazed. So it really goes by, mouth to mouth, computer to computer. So that's our luckiness, I think. Then we're really trying to promote GIS inside of the organization by example.
Well, that's great, Vanda. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Angie, let me ask you the same question. You shared with us about, what you're doing at ChampionX, and you have implemented new systems. I know you work with multiple clients that might have different cultures, or different things to approach, and you guys are approaching, these companies with this new system. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's funny because I just completely understand what Vonda's talking about. I mean, when I came to ChampionX, there was not much of a GIS presence whatsoever. Tiffany knows very well the challenges we have had. But just as Vonda said, I mean, once you start showing people just the power of getting inside data, I mean, spreadsheets are wonderful if you like spreadsheets, but they're not if you like to see where things are. So I joined the midstream group, but since then, we have just expanded our GIS footprint into our logistics department too, where we're using it now for route optimization, and we're using it for sales and marketing, exploring those avenues as well. So just one little crumb of GIS just, sparks so much stuff. And it's been so exciting these last 3 years, honestly, to kind of open up people's eyes to what GIS does. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm a little overworked, but it's fun.
Well, thank you, Angie, for sharing that. Andy, I'm going to move to you and kind of ask you the same question. Now, I know you for a few years, and I know, you work kind of in the corporate environment, and now you've been working with Plant Analytics as a consultant. But, in your presentation, you kind of mentioned about, new regulatory changes, new laws. A lot of times working with companies that are navigating a completely new set of rules, and you have to go in there, right, and show the value of GIS. And, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Working here in Colorado, they got what I would say, ever evolving regulatory environment. Seems like every year, every 6 months, 3 months, everything's changing, rework, do this over, brand new regulations every year, that type of thing. So, ArcGIS Pro, our online web app builder, those types of things. And it really helps companies and clients stay ahead of the regulatory environment in Colorado. The biggest thing is, making sure that operations can continue. The worst thing that could happen is a new regulation comes down and a company has to stop drilling or has to stop their completions for a few months to try to figure it all out. So, that's the biggest key for me is, using the suite of Esri tools to kind of stay ahead of the regulations and stay ahead of all the rulemaking here in Colorado.
Thanks, Andy. It's actually it's interesting to see all of your journey and how so many things are aligned with how you're reaching out to different departments and then how that just kind of perforates throughout the organization. So it's great to see that. But we have a ton of questions and they're still coming in. So we have time. So please send in your questions. But I have a question for you, Vonda. And the first question for you that came up says, how do you deliver the results of your various analysis you share to your end users?
Well, first of all, the end users are a very small group of people because LCV is still, it's just a couple, handful of folks. So we have a live session with them when we are sitting in a meeting, of course, not online because of our situation, but we also educating them when we do the analytics. Then, okay, this was your input data. This is what you were looking for. And this is how we reach this one. So we actually kind of training them about GIS and all the analytics behind the scene. So we are dragging them down into the spatial statistics, which is sometimes super confusing to them to really understand them. We just didn't pull out those numbers from our pocket. We really, made sure that the input information, what they were giving us, or the data, what we find somewhere, that's another part, right? To weed out the data. And then we applied all those analytics on it. Then the results, it's really backed up by science. So by showing them that, they believe us. I mean, that's what I can say.
I love that approach, actually educating the users and having them involved in the process. Yes. I'm sure that probably requires them or has them coming back to you for more and more different things because they really understand what you're doing,
That's good.
There's another question.
Go ahead.
Oops. No, go ahead. All right. I'm getting excited. All right. Angie, I have a question for you. During your presentation, you demonstrated Champion X's pipeline risk IQ solution. There was a question on how does this fit into the integrity management plan?
So that's a good question. We get that quite a bit. So integrity management is actually 9 different components, right? And internal corrosion is just one of those 9. So it's not meant to be like a replacement for an internal or integrity management program, but it's just feeds into it. So we've developed, through working with our customers, we can load the results of our analysis to either pods or whatever system they have that then feeds their integrity management program. So that's the good thing that we're with GIS, of course, that we're not tied to any certain structure or anything. We can modify our results and deliverables to fit into whatever plan they're using and whatever format they need. So it's very helpful. Because there's just a ton of different software packages or just methodologies for integrity management. So having that kind of flexibility to assist our customers in whatever way they can, it's been really good. Okay. So hope that answers that.
Yes. Thanks, Angie.
So we have a few more questions here. Actually, we have a question for Matt. Matt, in your presentation, you mentioned a few items: remote sensing, field inspections, sensors. And the question that's coming in is, which one is better? The trade-offs in kind of these 3 categories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so between sensors or IoT devices, inspections that are performed by people in the field, and remote sensing, there's definitely trade-offs between each of them, and they can all be applied to emissions monitoring. One trade-off is how frequently can each of these items inspect. Sensors, right? They're constantly monitoring, whereas remote sensing might be able to capture weekly data, like we saw with that GHGSat example. Whereas inspections, you're relying on people to go out and actually visit facilities. So how frequently something can be inspected with, also the area that it could cover, right? Remote sensing can cover the whole globe, whereas a sensor typically is going to be tied to a facility or a specific asset or a piece of equipment, right? So how big of an area, also how much of an area, or how small of an issue, I should say, can be picked up, right? From satellites, you're not going to observe a leak from, a plugged and abandoned well, for example, but you will pick up really big leaks, enabling you to maybe cover most of your significant emissions. And then the last one is cost, right? So each of these has a different cost. And so there's all these different trade-offs. Those 4 are sort of the key ones that come to mind. And when picking which one to use or which combination of technologies to use, the right one really depends on the scenario.
Thanks, Matt. Andy, question for you. So you showed, question says, you showed a new way of collaborating and working together as a team in projects. Did you have any challenges rolling this out or changing how people work?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I go back to, I spent 6 years or so at Anadarko, and we at first, when I first got there, we didn't have much for collaborative environments within GIS. And then we started using some ArcGIS Online layers, like hosted feature layers, web app builder, things like that, to make notes, add attachments, edit parcels, edit polygons. And it really helped because it can allow, like I said in my presentation, it can allow dozens of different colleagues, different teammates, even people in different offices, see dynamic changes, interact directly with the data. So, it's a really big benefit that, someone in Houston can update it, someone in Denver can see the update almost simultaneously. Like I said, you can share notes, you can share attachments, pictures, you can edit a lot of that data in the field. So it really helped kind of bring a lot of teams together, working with the same data. I think I mentioned in my presentation, a regulatory analyst can make a note that a geologist could see, a geologist can make add an attachment that an engineer could see. And it really kind of helps bring a lot of teams together under the same GIS umbrella.
That's awesome. Vanda, actually, another question for you. So, well, with these new changes, a lot of interest there. Actually, the question is, what is the most challenging part of helping low carbon ventures with their projects?
Well, I would say finding the right data, because there is so many information out there. I mean, this really took off like a couple of years ago, and then so many open data sources, so many companies, so many, government, entities and companies are releasing data, and then weed that out and really understand then if it's true or not, or it's usable for us, or really has that depth of information what we are looking for to gain that data set and that information what we are at Low Carbon Venture are needed the most. So that's the most challenging. It's really, just we need to learn the data, what we put our hands on, and then make sure then we choose the right one. So that's I think that would be the most challenging part.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks, Vanda. Angie, this next question is for you. Angie.
So exciting.
So, Angie, in your case, you showed us some insight workbooks. How did your end user adopt this new way of looking at data and analytics, and how well was it received?
Right. Well, that is a very good question, because insights is very analytical. I mean, and if the right person isn't looking at that data, it's just kind of going over their head. So you kind of have to just break it down for them it very quickly, like I did, just show them the data, and then the map that supports it. Here's the hot spots, and here's why. And don't if they don't know GIS, they're not going to figure it out very quickly. So that's you have to have the right audience for sure to understand that data. So we do deliver it in other formats too, for those kinds of people that aren't just as savvy, tech savvy. So we print maps as well, and incorporate it into our recommendations and things like that. But for those guys, the upper management people, those are the ones that want to see where are we spending money, and is the money we're spending working? Because we also do like a time slider analysis as well. So, you go 6 months from now and go retest and see, okay, is that place still red? And if it is, what the heck are we doing, right? So those are the kind of guys that really need to see that kind of detail, and they love it, that part. But yeah, it's not for everybody. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but that is the correct one.
No, but I mean, I obviously people want to know, and I think you're exactly right? It's, you have to make things to fit the audience. And I think everybody here probably has to modify different things that they do depending on the audience, right? So.
Right. Yep. So, but it all of these comes back to just that visual display of the risk, and that's just key, right? So even if they're not clicking on charts or whatever, even if it's just a visual of the high risk areas, that's just so beneficial. So it's been very well received.
Thanks, Angie.
That's great. So I guess just kind of keeping in the topic of data, we're in GIS, right? Everybody wants to know about data. So Andy, actually, this question is for you. In your presentation, obviously, you were talking about different data sets and how to manage them. So this is actually probably a question that is particular to Colorado. They say, is it possible to also utilize COGCC data in this analysis?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, absolutely. I last few years have spent some time on various state sites as far as oil and gas goes: Colorado, Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, Texas, and actually Colorado has one of the better state sites for oil and gas data. They actually make it pretty easy to download the data, surface hole location, bottom hole location, permits, things like that. They have a lot of tables and a lot of geodatabases and shapefiles on their site, and they actually make it pretty easy to scrape all their data too, which is nice. So it's easy to come by the data. It's easy to bring into Project ArcGIS Online, which is nice. So, data like surface hole locations, bottom hole locations, paths, are all very useful, pieces of information when determining site feasibility or regulatory compliance. So absolutely, anytime I looking at the regulatory environment of Colorado, I almost always have COGCC wells, surface holes, paths, whatever brought in. At least, if you need to take a look at it, you can. But it was definitely good information to have at your disposal in a project for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. Tiffany, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, and since we're talking about data, Vonda, there's another question for you, specifically around data. And the question is, how do you manipulate the data to your specific needs?
Oh, heavy question. Well, it really depends what is the outcome, what we are looking for, right? But there are basic, functions what we are trying to use. Just first to understand the data set, then to see, then if we go down certain route is what that's going to yield us, or if we turn to the other direction, what kind of information we can gain. What if we combining, data sets, and then getting into a totally new, information what we never seen before. So it really depends on what's the need, but we are trying to approach every single data and every single data combination in a way that is not just going to answer that specific question what the low carbon venture team is looking for, but possibly find even more than that.
Thanks, Vonda.
So there's a question here related to mission. Darren and Scott cannot be on the call today, but Matt is here. Matt, maybe I can throw that question over to you. So the question is, can mission work with the current ArcGIS environment that I have in place?
Yeah, so ArcGIS Mission is an additional server capability on top of ArcGIS Enterprise. So it would rely on either standing up a new ArcGIS Enterprise environment or tacking it on top of your own ArcGIS Enterprise environment. And that enables you to use all those other applications too in conjunction with it. Like you saw in Scott's presentation, he used dashboards, but also field applications fit into the sort of whole workflow. So yeah, it is something that can be added on to ArcGIS Enterprise.
Thank you, Matt. So I think we have maybe time for one, maybe two more. Angie, actually, this question is for you. The question is, what kind of feedback have you gotten actually from regulatory agencies once you implemented this system?
Well, that's it. That is a valid question, because that is what we're trying to help them accomplish, right? Is regulatory compliance. David Wendt is our internal corrosion guru. He's been doing it for 40 years. He's just amazing. And he's friends with a lot of regulatory types. He actually teaches at PHMSA classes. Oh, sorry, I'm kidding. 1 second, please. I didn't know there was going to be so many questions. Just kidding. So he actually teaches at PHMSA. So we kind of picked some of those cohorts to have a look at it and run it by them and see what they thought. They gave it all the thumbs up. So it has been kind of vetted by different state regulatory agencies. But so that was kind of how we decided to move any modifications we made late in the day was based on their feedback and stuff. So it's been, they came through for us and said it was good. So I was happy. Thank goodness, right? I was happy about that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Angie. Well, Tiffany, I think we may have time for one more. How about maybe you take it and then I'll close us out?
Yeah, so the last question is for Andy. Andy, the question is, could you see the data and the results of your analysis to be useful in field apps as the field crews confirm pad changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I obviously demoed making edits to a hosted feature layer on my desktop, but it can very easily be edited out in the field. You could very easily be using Survey 123 or another one of the field apps along with the data. So yeah, absolutely. You can have that data in the field, add notes, add attachments, take pictures, things like that. So yeah, it would be pretty easy to do all that work outside of the office for sure.
All right. We only have a couple of minutes left. So I want to take this time, first of all, to thank all of our presenters coming to this live Q&A session and share more of your knowledge and your experience with all of the community. I also would like to thank our extended community that has been attending all of the sessions throughout the last 3 days. Obviously, this has been different times, and we have been able to stay virtual, right, in order to stay safe. We really can't wait for the day that we can again be together and give each other high fives and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and have a lot of these conversations in person. But the outpour of collaboration that has come from the community throughout all of these events, it's invaluable. We're really hard at Esri to put in the tools together, but we recognize that the real value comes from the great GIS community and the willingness to collaborate with each other. So really, we're honored of working with you every day. We thank you for all your work that you're doing, and we wish you the best in the coming weeks and months, and we'll continue to press forward. Keep doing what you're doing. It is awesome to be part of this community, and we thank you once again. With that, again, thank you everybody for attending. If you have any further questions that we couldn't get to, make sure that you reach out either to a colleague or somebody at Esri, and together we'll find a way just to continue pushing forward and continue to be successful. Have a great afternoon. Thank you everybody for attending.